Mark Levin is the most prominent neoconservative talk host in the country and has been for some time. He has a lot of influence, has been very popular. He's also a complete bully and a coward, and I have personal experience with this. Right now you're seeing a tussle between Mark Levin, the neocon, who is criticizing Tucker Carlson and others on the right who are anti-neocon. He's criticizing Tucker Carlson in particular because he says he's platforming Nick Fuentes, who is a bad person I don't really like at all, has said genuinely racist things, considers himself a racist, whatever. I looked at Tucker Carlson's interview as confronting this guy who has a large following, I think it's like 5 million on Rumble or something, and being like, hey, collective guilt is bad, racism is bad, anti-Semitism is bad, and that's what happened. But that's not really what I want to focus on today. I want to focus on Mark Levin. So Mark Levin is a neoconservative, which means he's a Bush-Cheney Republican. He loves war. Anytime there's a chance for war anywhere in the world, he will make rationalization for why the United States should be involved in that, why we should fund that. And at the top of the list, he's Israel first. If you're MAGA, you're America first. You might like Israel, you might want to ally with Israel, but America's first. You're an American. That's not Mark Levin. Tucker Carlson's America first. Mark Levin is Israel first. The reason I am bringing this up today, on a personal level, Mark Levin, and I've been what would have been called an America First conservative for a long time. I'm a Ron Paul libertarian. I'm an anti-interventionist. I'm anti-war. I don't want the United States involved in all these wars. There was a time around 2009 I was working in conservative talk radio, part-time. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was part of the morning show. I would do political commentary. I chipped in and did traffic and other things, whatever I could to get ahead. I was a younger man trying to make my way in the world of talk radio. But I reviewed Mark Levin's book, Liberty and Tyranny, which came out in 2009. And you got to think, this was right after the Bush administration. Obama had just been elected. But in this book, Mark Levin is trying to maintain neoconservatism as American conservatism proper. That was the goal of his book, Liberty and Tyranny. And in the book, he says things like, if you're a statist, you're bad, and if you're liberty, you're good. I agree with that. But his definitions were warped, to say the least. In part of the book, he said, if you were against government mass surveillance, if you were against the Patriot Act, you were a statist. Wrap your head around that. Let me repeat that. If you were against government mass surveillance of us, and you were against the Patriot Act, you were a statist. If you were for mass surveillance by the Bush-Cheney administration and for the Patriot Act, you were for liberty. Obviously, that's stupid on its face in 2025. Another thing he said, he addressed waterboarding, which is torture, which the Bush administration was all for. Dick Cheney defended, his stupid daughter Liz Cheney defended. In Mark Levin's book, Liberty and Tyranny, in 2009, he said that enhanced interrogation tactics, which is waterboarding, which is torture, which neocons denied was torture, that if you were a statist, you were against waterboarding. If you were for liberty, you were for waterboarding. I know this sounds completely bizarre again in 2025, that's what his neocon book said in 2009. So me, in my limited radio capacity, I was writing for a number of publications, and for one of them I wrote a book review of Liberty and Tyranny. I pointed this out, that this neoconservative radio host was totally screwing up the ideas of liberty and status and all this. He was promoting neoconservatism, and it was BS, and I was calling it out. So I was a little guy on a small radio market in Charleston, South Carolina, saying this on the air and having conversations with listeners about it. Well, he read the review, and the corporate chain I worked for at the time was also part of Mark Levin's syndicated program. Mark Levin, this is what was told to me. This could be different. There's two sides to every story. This was told to me by my program director at the time, that Mark Levin called the head of this group that we work for, this corporate group, and asked about me and wanted me fired for criticizing him and his neocon book. So this head called my program director, the head of the small market where I worked at, and confronted me about it. We talked about it. He didn't want to fire me. He was a good guy. He's no longer with us God rest his soul, he didn't want to fire me because I was a team player. I did a good job for him. But here was Mark Levin, this nationally syndicated host, wanting to fire me, a guy making part-time, making nothing, trying to make something of myself, because I disagreed with his political views and criticized him on the air. He wanted me canned. That's what a bully and coward Mark Levin is. Long story short, the agreement I made was I can no longer talk about Mark Levin on the air in my small market in Charleston, South Carolina, as to not hurt his feelings. That's what happened. That was the compromise, and I got to keep my job. But he wanted me fired. Big bad Mark Levin, this neoconservative jerk at the top of the talk radio industry at the time in 2009, wanted me canned, a part-timer nobody was paying attention to, because I criticized his book and his neocon views. That's the kind of man Mark Levin is, and in this debate with Tucker Carlson and his neocon self, Mark Levin, debating with true America Firsters, I just thought that was something everybody should know about Mark Levin.